welcome everyone here joining us in person and via live stream. Thank you for being here. All of our board members are present. The purpose of the work session is to receive operational reports from the administration and discuss matters as a board. We will begin with the PCCS annual report and financial audit presentation presented by Dean Mendive and Ellie Flores.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, Ollie is not able to join us. She was going to try and make it. She had another appointment that couldn't be rescheduled. However, I do have her part, and if that's okay, I'll go ahead and read her part, and you can ask me questions, and I'll do my best. However, I may look like an idiot, depending on how hard your questions are. So Ollie wanted me to make mention that this is her 18th year as the business manager of PCCS. Our general fund ending balance in $1,306,049, which is an increase of $172,754 from FY23. One of the reasons for the increase was due to higher earning interest rates in our money market account. Note that $424,191 is kept in a separate savings account, which we are reserving for future expenses. Our board has decided to put money into a business money market through our financial institutions, Bank of Idaho, to earn interest. Great things. We were able to increase all classified employees to a minimum of $15 per hour. We started all-day kindergarten last year for the first time. We added the position of a behavioral support specialist, which has been extremely helpful. And we were able to pay contracted employees a retention bonus for committing to stay on of $2,000 per year at the end of the year when they sign their contract. So some things that are pretty great for the current year is, as Clark might remember, but our 7th and 8th graders always went to Teton Science School, which has really just become prohibitively expensive, but which was a great experience for students, but it actually didn't really jive with the curriculum terribly well. It's in the year that they have a big unit on energy, and they went up there and they would learn about picus, which is a little rodent, which, I mean, it's a great learning experience, but doesn't really match very well. So this year we've designed a new experience that we're kind of running ourselves instead of with a formal organization like Teton Science School, where our students are going to Southern Utah instead. It's way cheaper, and I think it's going to be a way better experience for our students, and matches very much with the curriculum that they're learning at the time. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're also adding a rock climbing wall in the gym, which really kind of matches our jam a little bit too. Current year concerns, of course, is a substitute shortage. I bet you guys know something about that. We learned here a while ago that our gym that we built 10 years ago, the corner of it is sinking very slowly. And so we are having to do a big repair, which we're hoping to do this summer. I learned that there's such things as putting in anchors underneath large buildings. So we're going to find out soon how many of these anchors that we'll need. And so hopefully this summer we'll be able to do that and preserve our gym. Otherwise, the engineer says we have about 10 years or we're going to be in trouble. Another challenge, which I'm sure you are familiar with, is our special education numbers just continue to increase, especially students with significant disabilities. And so that comes with lots of challenges how to support kids. And then attendance. Attendance last year was our worst year for attendance. Forever we budgeted for 95% attendance and did better than that and beat that typically, and last year it was 93%, which was a little brutal. And this year is already starting off not great. And even though we've put several things in place to communicate better with families regarding attendance, still, I don't know, coming back. I don't know if it's coming back from COVID and parents want to keep their kids home when they're not feeling well or what. But attendance is a challenge for us, and starting to look like this year is going to be a challenge again. But hopefully with the communication with parents will help. So that is Ollie's part. I don't know if anybody has any financial questions for me. No? Okay.
It sounds like you're doing a really good job of, planning for the future and everything.
Trying to, yeah. So the gym thing is a question mark, but.
A contractor mishap? I mean,
The truth is, I think, when they built PCCS, and they built the building, well before my time, of course, they should have built it 18 inches higher. They should have paid.
oh, the whole school.
The whole school needed to be about 18 inches higher. Just the fact that we're close to the river. It's kind of interesting. I walked through the building with the engineer, and there was a crack that's been there forever. You've probably seen it 100 times, but I never really thought too much about it. But the crack that's happening in the gym floor, right? And then it actually continues all the way through, including the old building. And so he said, this whole end of the building is also sinking. However, it's sinking much slower, and you've got a good 50 years or so on this because of that. However, the gym, it's just one corner of the gym, and it's sinking just a little bit faster than the rest. And so he said, got to get on it. Get on it pretty quick. The sooner we get on it, then the easier the repair will be. So.
And where it's groundwater, I'm assuming it's not covered by insurance?
It's not, doesn't seem like it's going to be covered by insurance. Nope, it doesn't look like it's going to be covered by insurance. And we learned about it 2 years after we could potentially have done something with the builder in Idaho. Here's another thing I learned. In Idaho, typically you have 5 years, but sometimes you can have up to 8 years to go back on the contractor, and we've discovered it right about the 10-year anniversary. So, that's not an option for us at all. So, I think it's going to be on us. So, to repair it. The good news is it's not as expensive as I thought it was going to, as I was afraid. I mean, it sounds like it's probably going to be potentially south of $100,000 to fix. Maybe if it's bad, it might be a little bit north of $100,000. If we get good news, then it'll likely be a little bit south.
That does sound a lot.
Better than what you would expect. I mean, it sounds like they drill deep holes, super deep holes, and then pour a concrete pillar underneath, and they do however many they need. And it doesn't lift up the part that's already sunk, but it just stops it from sinking any further. And as long as it doesn't sink any further, we'll be fine. At least that's what the engineer says. So,
Interesting.
yeah. Interesting. Things you learn being a principal.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot about construction too.
Right. So, as for my part, I wasn't going to go too much into the weeds with test scores. However, I see improvement. Our previous year's test scores were really low for us. We felt that was a concern. Seen some improvement, especially looking at the cohorts. So, looking at fourth graders compared to the previous year's third graders, right? So how they did how the same group of kids did the next year. We saw improvement in almost every grade level, and in some cases, several cases, pretty dramatic improvement. So that's the good news, I think. So as long as we're improving, then I'm pretty happy. So there's that business. As far as our goals last year, one thing is our main goal was improving engaging parents in their students' education, right? And so the main part of that was a new communication system that we're using. It's called Rooms, but it allows the teachers to it's an app. It's connected to our app, and parents can essentially text the teacher. They can text. They can do group texts. They can do that. All of that business, which is just today seems like that's how people prefer to communicate. And teachers can do their newsletters through the system too, through a different part of the system. And you know, it was a little rough getting everybody switched over because especially people who were really used to emails. But we've really, I think we've gotten there. And so this year it's really kind of become the accepted thing. And so that is really nice. We continue to work with Corey Bennett for math. That was the other math, or the other improvement goal that we had last year, and we did some great stuff with Corey. We also did a great book club for math over the summer that I led. I did the book study with the Regional Math Center earlier in the year, and then we did it as a staff over the summer, which was really great. Pretty excited about that book, and so all that I think was pretty good. As far as yeah, and I think that's it. That was all I was really planning to say. Unless you have any questions for me.
What's your enrollment like now? I'm sorry, I don't have, if you had those numbers, I can't get into my board docs. So I can't see anything, but I'm
I
curious
think
what your
it
numbers are
is
like these days.
300. We have some spots in middle school, which isn't terribly unusual for us. I think our current number is like 328 or something, 327.
326.
326. Thank you. And so at full, usually depending on where we set our numbers for middle school, 332 or 336 is typically full for us. So, so we have some open spots in middle school, but not too many open spots. Yeah, and hopefully we'll get closer to filling those for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is the proposed middle school science adoption, which will be presented by Amy Bowie.
Good afternoon. So I'm here to provide some information about the middle school science adoption, which we've been anticipating this adoption for a couple of years, really, in terms of talking and preparing and thinking about the best approach for this adoption. So it's actually pretty exciting that it's here. And you have two attachments in your, is she on, did you get on yet?
No.
But you'll share. Okay, you have two attachments in your packet. And I would say let's start with the slides, the one that says slides. So in June, and I think I reported on this, but I'm sure you don't remember. I barely remember, and I was there. So in June, we pulled together 3 middle school science teachers from each building. And we started to have conversations about the direction we wanted to head and their current units and how we start evaluating. Before we go into an adoption, we evaluate what's currently happening so that we make informed decisions on what we're searching, what we're looking for in curriculum. And so as they were evaluating their current resources, we spent a lot of time looking at data. And I just pulled just a few slides out of like a 50-slide presentation that we went over during that week in June. And you can see the first slide says that it's an ISAT overview. Our district on the 8th grade science, ISAT was 49 at or above proficient, and the state was 41% at or above proficient. And we really wanted to know how we did, because the state and the national standards are really taking a shift towards science and engineering practices, phenomenon-driven instruction, and cross-cutting concepts. So we wanted to know how our and the ISAT's reflecting that. So we wanted to know how our students did on those science and engineering practices. You can see it's pretty equivalent to the state. So if you look at the first one, using scientific reasoning to construct explanations and arguments, and to design solutions. The state performance was below proficient, as was ours. But then that second piece of data is in relation to the test as a whole. For the state, it was an area of weakness. And for us, it was similar. It was more average in terms of performance on the test as a whole. The next one, developing and using models to describe the natural world. The state and district were both below proficient, and that was an area of weakness. Gathering data and investigating scientific questions. The state was below proficient, and it was an area of weakness. Our district, we were below proficient, but it was similar to our performance on the test as a whole. And then the last one was kind of a bright spot, using mathematical thinking to analyze and interpret patterns in data. State was below proficient, and it was an area of strength, and we were at or near proficient, and it was an area of strength. So we had some conversations about that. And then if you go to the next slide, I think you'll see how this led to us making some decisions. So the next slide, currently we teach physical science standards in 6th grade, life science standards in 7th grade, and earth science standards in 8th grade. So if you're looking at this slide, it goes 8th, 7th, 6th. And there's been a lot of conversation. One of the things we did before we even got into the data is we took the standards and we had the teachers rank the standards by like most complex to least complex. And then once they did that, they were pretty surprised. I don't know if they were surprised, but it was really clear that more complex, there are more complex standards in the physical science than there are at any other level, right? And we're teaching that in 6th grade. So that was sort of eye-opening. And then you can see the trend. In 8th grade earth and space science, we're at or near proficient in 2 out of the 3 standard sections, 67%. In life science, which they hadn't taken for a year, they were at or near proficient in 1 out of 4, so 25%. And for those 6th grade science standards, we were at or near proficient in 0 out of the 4. And so we did this, like I said, with those 12 science teachers and had a lot of conversations about what we were teaching, how we were teaching it, where we were excelling. We did this again in August with all middle school science teachers. We sort of replicated it, and we didn't go through all of it, but we summarized like the work and some of the discoveries. And I don't know if I've ever been a part of something like this, but it was unanimous. Like every middle school science teacher said, we've got to go to integrated. With the shift towards science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, if that's the goal, right? Our students are clearly not performing on these physical science standards that are more complex, that they haven't seen since 6th grade. And we'd been toying with this for a couple of years, honestly. And so we made the decision that as we're looking for a resource, that we want to look for an integrated resource so that we can integrate the standards and have them become more complex throughout the 3 years. So I wanted you to see that was a data-driven decision. And I think I shared in cabinet, I was humbled and appreciative to see that even though it may be harder for some teachers to make a change at this stage in the game, and how, sometimes I taught for 18 years, sometimes it's easier to keep doing things the way that you've been doing it. But if you look at the data and you say, this is what's best for kids, if we change our approach, and then I was pretty blown away with how excited they all were to make that change to benefit students. So that shows that.
So this is in place of mystery science?
No,
Or how does
we
that-
currently have, mystery science is K through 5.
Oh,
6
that's
through
fine.
8
Okay.
is science dimensions, and that's annual,
what
so that leads us right in. I'll show you one more slide, and then that leads us right into the memo.
Okay.
The last slide was just, we explained to the teachers, because unless they've been through an adoption recently, they don't know that it looks different, right, than it did last time they did an adoption. So we explained Idaho Code, we explained the advisory team, the adoption committee, and the board, and everybody's role. So that leads into, you can open up the memo. So And you can see Science Dimensions with a 2018 copyright is what we're currently using, and that expires at the end of the 24-25 school year. We have allocated the necessary funds for this purchase from this year's secondary textbook budget. As we move forward with the adoption process, we'll be forming an advisory team and an adoption committee. And these groups will begin meeting at the end of January and are expected to present their recommendation at the board work session in March, so there's sort of your time frame. We like to avoid those, especially with the parent committee, those November and December months of holidays so we like to do our preparation during that time, and then the meetings, it seems to have worked effectively to do that in January. So then you can see our priorities for selecting instructional materials for science grades 6 through 8. And we arrived at these priorities by thorough investigation of what was working and what's not and what we're currently doing. So we want alignment with the Idaho content standards. We want to incorporate those cross-cutting concepts in science and engineering practices as outlined in NGSS. Focus on using real-world phenomenon to drive student inquiry and understanding. And I think I told you about this, but during that June meeting with those teachers, we had the high school teachers, the high school science teachers come in and share with the middle school science teachers some examples of some lessons they were doing with phenomenon-driven instruction. And so they were really excited about that. An integrated approach that combines the physical life on Earth, integration of technology to foster hands-on learning, comprehensive assessment tools to monitor student progress, and support and accommodations for diverse learners to ensure all students can access and engage with the material. And the teachers were really adamant about being able to diversify the reading levels because they have learners at all levels. So those are the things that we're looking for. The timeline, you can see, goes from January 30th, will be our first committee. That's the committee orientation, and we make the materials available for review. The publisher so then they have a couple weeks, a few weeks actually, to look through those before the publisher presentations. And then February 27th is their program review and discussion. They'll also receive, and they always, which is not only will they receive their advisory team recommendations, we're 2 for 2, they've asked for them. After they've perused the materials, listened, had their conversation, inevitably they say, well, we want to know what the teachers think. So we'll provide with them what the advisory team, and I think you've seen that. The advisory team will say, here's the strengths and the weaknesses of each program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've been in 2 adoptions.
Yeah.
So.
And then an optional meeting if needed for additional discussion, and that just sort of depends. The 5th grade social studies, they didn't need that, they didn't want that. The K-5 ELA, they wanted it, so we just scheduled it. And then March 11th, adoption committee recommendation to the board. So that's what the timeline looks like.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much. Oh,
yeah, I've
go
got a
ahead.
question.
Yeah.
I was really pleased to have all the information on the curriculum for the social studies for the 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's going to be available again?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Great.
Absolutely. And there are 2 board members that are non-voting at this juncture. There are 2 board members who are non-voting members on that committee.
I
And
think it's Ray and Megan.
it's Ray and Megan. Yep. Yep. But so as a non-voting member, you'll get all of that, but I'll also make it available to everybody, especially like the links to the online. And we're in the process of that right now. Once we've identified really clearly what we're looking for, then we meet with various reps and we look and we find the programs that best meet our needs, and then that's when we share out.
Great.
Yeah, you guys will have to report back what you find, what you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago when I was a newbie, but I'm looking forward to it.
It was so good, both of those.
Right.
Last 2 were so good.
So as we move forward, in previous adoptions, well, we've had really with the Spanish, that was a renewal.
Yeah.
So I guess we've had 2 formal.
And the biology was a renewal also. We did high school biology and Spanish.
Mhm.
Oh, actually, we brought Spanish in.
Yeah, Spanish was a.
We did. It was just such a small one. And we brought in parents. It was just such a small.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like 3 and 3 years.
yeah, it was 3 teachers and 3, yeah, we just adjusted it because it was
So
smaller
as we
scale.
move forward with the science, from our board training, we talked a little bit about the selection of candidates for, the parent advisory part of this. And we were, just wanted to have a quick discussion with the board to ask for, that continued direction, or if you want to do something a little bit different.
You mean
Whereas-
as opposed to last time?
Yeah, so in the previous times, we've asked that the parents submit basically a letter, not a letter.
It's an application.
Yeah,
This
of
is,
interest.
yeah,
Just a couple.
And then the board was, made selections that way.
Yeah, I like that process.
From our board training, if you'll recall, Ms. Ritter suggested that maybe it doesn't go quite to that extent, but that's why I wondered if the board had any thoughts in regard to the process we're using, or if you would like to modify it at all.
I'm with Ray. Ray, I really did like it. It was really helpful to hear from them, to make an informed decision,
Yeah, I enjoyed seeing what they had to say in their applications and, whether or not they had children in class and what their backgrounds were. I liked the process. I thought it worked well.
And it's advisory to us, so we're asking for people, that can advise us.
I guess I missed, why did she thought
don't
that was going
remember
into
her
making it too complicated? I don't remember her
Yeah,
not.
probably to some degree, I would
I
guess
don't remember
that.
talking about the way that we have done it.
Yeah, when we talked about board committees and even textbook adoption committee, when we mentioned that we had the board select from applicants, she maybe suggested that that was going a little too deep, but if you don't recall that part.
I don't recall
What did
them.
you recommend we do?
Saying that.
well, maybe it would help if I shared logistically what it looked like so that you could
Okay,
actually
sure.
weigh, like, is it, I get that it's nice to be able to look through and read it. And then
Yeah.
if I explain the process, then I think we just weigh the time and resources that go into the process versus what we're getting out of that, right? So this is what it looks like. I'll send out an email through Infinite Campus with Courtney to the whole district, to the middle schools, right, in this case. And it'll go out to everybody. If they're interested, they call their building principal. Then their building principal secretary puts it on a spreadsheet that comes back to my department. And then after I see, like, each school has, sometimes we've had up to 50, sometimes we've had up, like 20. So then I send another email out that then explains to them the process where they, and what the requirements are, and they fill out a form and an application, and then we change the application to a format for you to read. Then you read it, and then the other thing that's a little tricky is then the timeline has to revolve around work sessions and board, we're waiting for our next work session and our next board meeting for you to have time to read them and then select them. So I mean, I guess ultimately the question is that if you're looking at the list of candidates and what they're writing, are there some that you really feel are more qualified to be on an adoption committee than others? Because, and that's
That-
Now,
that's my
I thought it
opinion.
was just a link, that they were sent an email and it was a link to a Google form and they were sent the instructions, and if they wanted to fill it out, then they just do it. Because to me, it feels like we can take that whole first part out.
just
I
send
don't
it
know
out.
why they would have to contact the building principal. I thought it was just an email.
You
where
just
they
want the
look
first
through the
email.
requirements and decide if that's what they want to do, and then they click on that Google
The
form.
reason we had them contact, going back, the reason we had them contact the building principal in the first place was if they had specific questions regarding the curriculum, just so they weren't, and so that the building principal knew. But we could skip that first step. We could just send the email out that included the link, and they could either. The other thing is on some of them that was like a little harder to foster, like participation, then the building principals could actually reach out to their parents who are oftentimes interested and involved. Like for fifth grade social studies, to be honest, it was like the email didn't bring back immediate. It was principals saying, hey, like telling their PTA or communicating it in other ways. So that's how we did that. But
So
we
how
could
would
skip-
you, I mean, if you were to redo the process, I mean, what are you proposing?
What am I don't know if I'm proposing anything, but I will tell you this. I will tell you, I've thought about when we first did this, I've thought about, would it be easier to just generate anybody who responds rather than make them justify themselves or explain themselves as to why they're interested? Because I feel like if we tell them what the requirements are, they're probably interested. So then we just get their name, we generate like maybe, because there's 5 parents, we do an automatic generator that's like 1 from each zone. Like that would make sense to me.
We
And it would just
discussed-
skip the app. I mean,
Yeah.
really what it's skipping is the time that we just, it's a timeline of about 3 or 4 weeks probably.
So
that-
the one,
of
sorry to
extra
interrupt you,
paperwork.
but
No, it's fine.
I think, working around our schedule, seems like, we've done stuff over email before. I think what I appreciated is that it was clear in those spreadsheets, someone who was taking the time to iterate
answer.
why really made a difference for me versus just a random, I think I'm interested, they put their
Right.
name on a list, and if they get picked, I mean, I guess I'm more inclined to let's adjust some of the things that we do, but I think that.
But you like,
I
that's what we
liked
want to
reading
know.
Because it felt like these people were invested because of their background or their experience, which you wouldn't get from without that. So if there's a way to maybe adjust some of the workload
Yeah.
that, like Deanna
Right.
mentioned, just use
Skip the first one, not make, have the principals do it, not have their secretaries do the initial
Yeah.
one. Just go straight to, just send out and hope that which is,
And they can still reach out to their PTA.
Yeah, I would say,
Still reach out to
sure.
parents that are
And
involved.
say, "Hey, you got
just
this
say, hey,
email."
watch for this email. I think that's great. that they-
skip the first one. And then, I was gonna say something else that we could do. Go ahead.
Okay, because I wasn't involved with the last one, but I'm wondering if it's, like you're saying, like a month in between waiting, if it would be a better use of everyone's time if that was generated and then you guys just went through and picked out
It's
the
a-
ones that
it's a-
were really
it's a-
interested instead of waiting on us to.
The problem is it's a board committee, and it's their people that are advising us. And for that reason, we had very lengthy discussions about this before, that we wanted to be able to know who is advising us. We didn't want it to be a random, kind of what Heather said. It was so helpful to know, like, somebody who's really
invested.
Well,
invested.
having engaged in the process, I agree with Heather.
We'll still have the form that they fill out, but instead of us sitting there and sifting through them,
We haven't
let our
ever had
team
that
decide.
many.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't ever had that many. I mean, it's taken me not very long, actually. But you can see after.
I think, just to answer your question, I think prior to new legislation and this board's decision on doing it this way, as I didn't work here then, so I'm speaking, so Superintendent Halpin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the curriculum department and the administrators would select the people for the committee. That's how I think
There
it
was
did.
either-
So I think that's how it used to be, exactly.
There's
Then
either
we just
one
have
or
to
two
approve 'em, right?
parents.
And then
Either
you
one
just,
or two.
what's
There's
that?
either one or two parents, because I was on that committee too. There was either one or two parents.
It probably depends on which committee they did. I think they had a varying number of, yeah.
Because when I first got on the board, it was prior to the legislation.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how it was done
Mm-hmm.
in that curriculum committee. I remember one parent. I don't remember if there was anyone else. Oh, I know what it was. There was one parent and then a counselor who was also a parent. So
Mm-hmm. I
they
think it
considered
depended,
that
because
a
I've looked
parent.
back on those notes, I think it depended on the particular adoption. I think sometimes there were 2 parents, sometimes there were 3. I don't think there was a set number, but they just wanted, before legislation, they just wanted parent representation. Since, so 2, 3, I've seen random. Since the legislation, we've had 5 parents and 5 educators so that we've got equal representation. And it was selected by the administrative team.
Yeah, and it was quite different. The legislation made it balanced because before, when I was on the curriculum committee, it was probably 15 people. 15 people with one parent, and then, like I said, the counselor who was also a parent, so that was the 2 parents. And so, this just made it so that, I think the purpose of the legislation was just to allow for the parents to be able to have a voice. And then that way, the parents aren't chosen And that was why I didn't want to, that's why I wanted to stay away from them being chosen in any other way than by the board. And that was our thinking, but you definitely don't have to agree with me.
And there was a lot of dialogue. Like, how do we, like, I know originally when I thought like that I was going to have to choose or my department was going to have to choose. Like, how do I determine that this parent is more qualified than this parent? Because they're all showing interest, right? So those were things that the board discussed about. And will we be a little biased as a board member? I didn't say this, they did. Will we be biased towards our own, like the people we know, like if we're looking and we know this person? And so I just remember those were all things that we talked about.
Yeah, it was like a 4-hour meeting, but that's why we decided that each board member only chose one, I think.
No, we chose,
Each board member?
One and an
we
alternate.
one and an alternate, I think.
We chose one and then a backup.
And then back
Right.
up in
Or
case
something.
somebody else.
Yeah.
And so
But-
our first choice we for sure got,
But-
and our second choice was put in
Right.
for a drawing.
But that's where it went that's the part that I think made it more complicated that we were doing. So if we could do it, like you said, through email.
Oh, yeah.
But waiting for the next board meeting, having everybody have one and a backup, and what do we do if there's a tie? Then we put them in a jar and we draw. Like, that got a little,
Now,
Cumbersome.
from what I remember, that's how the ELA went, but from what I remember you were involved in the social studies, it was all email. We got an email of all the parents.
Right.
We emailed back, these are the parents that we are wanting, and then we got an email as far as the final list. That's what I remember.
Yeah, no,
Where
we
were informed
got
of.
an email and we selected our choice and our alternate. And then
And then
we
you
voted
go
on it.
ahead, and then you went ahead and did the
Paged out.
random choice.
I will
And
just say about that process, the only part that was included in email is the reviewing. The actual selection has to be a formal board meeting
Yeah,
with
right.
action. So that's another meeting that we have to schedule, notice for, have people invited to attend and stream. So that's just another step in that process.
Well, I really
What
like,
about
Takes
email?
formalization.
I really liked the way the process worked, and I agreed with everything you said, if I could summarize it. But I liked the ability to see why they were interested, what their background was, and I liked that we had an option to choose a primary and an alternate. And as far as the preliminary work is concerned, I'll leave that up to your judgment as to whether or not there was
the logistics.
as to how you connect, how you run that procedure. But I liked the end result very much. I liked
you get to
I like
But all
being
the
able to read
communicated us.
about the candidates and to see why they're interested, and I like the fact that we had an opportunity to select them. And as far as if you can make it more efficient or
Yeah.
less cumbersome for you, I think that's fine. But the end result I liked very much.
I think in
Okay.
my mind,
I
it's the
think
end
that's-
result is we're looking for transparency, right? And when it's not picked, we have a consensus amongst us. I think that communicates a lot as well.
And I guess we've all been elected by people, so that it makes sense that we choose someone to represent.
Do you feel like we have the same transparency if we do it through email and they're chosen through email?
Well,
and
I
then-
think that we would need to have an appointment meeting like Renee said, but if we have until March, it sounds like we have enough.
So nothing,
So
so really, we're not changing it.
Right. Yeah.
Really, we're
That's
just doing
all-
it
yeah.
exactly the way we've
Today.
done it.
Yes.
Other than maybe I just don't send out that first
The
email.
first part of
I
it.
skip the first email, I send the second, and we'll
If
do it
you're-
exactly the way.
If you are okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
If you-
I'm okay
if
with
you
whatever,
want-
honestly, it just is worth a conversation on what's working best for you and what matters to
Yeah.
you. And
And
Well, I
I think
mean-
if we were doing, 20 or 30 of these, I could see where, then it becomes cumbersome. But when it only
think
happens once or twice a year,
If we were doing 20 or 30, I think the idea that I had suggested before, that we would need a standing committee for maybe 3 months or 6 months or something, where they're just a standing committee and all the curriculum just flows through them. So we're selecting once, then all of it just flows. But I still want to be the part of the selection, and then it would just flow.
Yeah.
And then when we have another
Yes.
one, it would just flow through.
Perfect. And I think there's the most we'll ever have is probably 3 on a busy year. And I think it works to have the people who are interested in that particular curriculum participate. So we can just keep doing exactly what we've been doing.
Yeah, well,
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I hope this is quick, but when you mentioned that they're looking at the data for this year and it's not helping them towards that test at the end of the year, they're missing all that physical science. Is there a plan for them to help this year instead of waiting a whole nother year where those kids are still just getting missed?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And absolutely, they do talk about that. And what it is, it's more focused on those science and engineering practices. And then they've divided up some of the standards, because as you're doing cross-cutting concepts and science and engineering practices and phenomenon-driven instruction, you can't help but connect standards from different domains. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so they're and
They've already got a plan.
They've already got it, and they're doing. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
Thank you.
And Amy, the more I've learned about other districts, the more I really believe you are our secret weapon. Because you really do a phenomenal job with, in the building, doing the curriculum development. I can't remember what you call it, but.
Yeah, the unit
Unit
development and the
development.
instructional camps and
Yes.
and I thank you. I won't take all the credit for that. That's a system that's been in place for a while. I'm a beneficiary of a system that I get that made me even want to apply for the job if I didn't get to do that, I wouldn't want to apply for the job. So thank you.
Yes, I think it's really quite remarkable, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, AJ Watson and Sue Pettit will report on the enrollment and district attendance area committees.
Good afternoon, Board. We just wanted to give you a quick update in regards to where we're at with the attendance and enrollment area committees and plan. As you saw in your packet, last week we sent out information to parents to see who was interested in participating on the committees, one for elementary and one for middle school. We sent it out at the end of last week and gave them a week to be able to reply. As of right now, elementary, we have 24 parents that were interested in serving on the committee.
That's great. And is it kind of representative of the city yet?
It really is, actually. There was only a couple schools when I looked that didn't have any, if just looking by school, that didn't have any parents that had submitted a interest or request for
great.
interest as of now, but it was pretty well spread out geographically.
Secondary has 19, and it is heavily over on one school for volunteering.
I see.
So
Can I guess?
So as far as the, I can't remember my question, never mind.
you're good.
That's all right. It might come up as we continue on. So the plan is that we will select, after receiving feedback, I believe Trustee Furness provided feedback in regards to adding a couple of additional parents. To that, we'll have 5 parents that will be selected from the various geographic areas, trustee zones, if that's the best way to describe it, and then 2 that will be randomly selected just from those that are left. So we'll have 7 parents. One additional thing that we thought of that we didn't introduce to you initially with the committee is we didn't have any teacher representation. We had administrative representation, board representation. We didn't have any teacher representation on this committee, and we thought that that was important as well. But we didn't want to exceed the amount of parent representation, so we decided we will, if the board is all right with it, we will add 2 additional teachers. So that committee in elementary would look like 14 committee members, 7 parents, and then 7 district staff members with those 2 teachers as part of
How
that.
about, I mean, I had been given some questions as when this came out. If we're reaching out to community members, specifically real estate brokers, people that understand the market, understand where homes, I mean, is that something, I don't know if that's.
I do think community members maybe have a place on the committee, or I guess they do have a place with public input. Certainly, that would be welcome. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
And I think as we look at the information, taking a look at future growth and projections will definitely be a part of the committee's work.
Yeah.
In doing that, and we'll get input from the cities as much as we can. We also have, I don't know what we call our GIS, Jonathan. Tell you what, we have an individual who helps develop what they call the GIS system. I'm not real familiar with it, but basically you can, population growth and identify the areas. If you want to encompass this area, these are the number of students that would be in that enrollment area or boundary.
The only reason I bring that up, though, is that's what these real estate agents or brokers, that's what they do. I mean, that's they've got their finger on the pulse of these kinds of things. And while I think having parent involvement is going to be important, I think there's also going to be the emotional side that the parents are going to be driven by versus, you know, and are we gonna be able to take a step back and analyze it away from emotions, and more data-driven, but I don't know.
So are you saying you'd like to include some community members that
That's-
aren't part of the
I mean, I
district?
don't know how the rest of the board feels,
I
but I
don't
guess
know, I
that's
mean-
part of my,
You could invite them in an advisory capacity. In fact, I think with transportation, they will have a component within this
Okay.
process,
yeah.
as well as the GIS consultant.
We
do And have so- our
key communicators submit input. I don't really know.
Well, and maybe it's instead of on the committee, because committees can get unwieldy.
Oh,
And
sure.
there's just too many. But maybe have a special public input with community members specifically for that,
Right.
and see
Right.
if we can
Draw
glean
from
some
that.
information from them that way too.
One suggestion I had, it's in the addendum, is all of the parents who wanted to be on the committee, maybe all of them receive an email saying, you know, the ones that are selected to be on the committee, that they would be notified. But then the rest of them would be notified saying, you weren't selected to be on the committee, but we recognize your interest and we will send you as a group email, like send you the board minutes and specifically offer you the opportunity, well, just like everybody else, but specifically allow them to have that, like everybody does, but just give them that specific invitation to give that feedback.
Just an email with
Just
the
to, so that they
minutes
can also be involved.
information.
But yet they're not on the,
Right.
like you said, you can't do that.
And there will be additional opportunities as we move forward. I mean, really, this is the first part, the committee, and they'll be they'll be taking input, analyzing the data, determining, hey, what do we need to make an informed decision as we look at the purpose and the goals of this committee, and then bringing that back to the board as well, and then getting some additional feedback, continuing those, but also then taking it out to the community for input and whatever we decide that looks like, town hall meetings, forums, presentations. They'll be a part of that before those final decisions are made. So it's just a long process over the next several months, but also knowing that with some of these decisions, they can't wait until the very end of the school year. So trying to move this along in a reasonable amount of time also being a priority, where we're trying to and looking at, at our November board meeting, at least presenting you with some of the information and potential options or proposals that come from those committees.
This does seem pretty aggressive.
It is,
Very quick.
timeline
It
wise.
feels really, it was like, whoa.
Well, the problem is if it's not,
Right.
it's gonna be another year.
It would be
before.
another
Right,
year. That's
right.
that's
No, I get it.
that's why the timeline has to be. It seems like it is rushed, and for all of us, right? Like we're sending this out, our first meeting. I mean, moving forward,
Monday.
we're getting this back Friday, letting parents know our first meeting is Monday night,
And this
And
is
so-
elementary.
and this
And
is
middle school.
middle school as well, elementary and middle school. So both of those would start on Monday night, and then having a meeting every Monday night, hour and a half for the next 4 or 5. It depends on how long, and this could continue on. It's one of those where we may be able to finish up the bulk of the work in 4 or 5 meetings, or it may continue once we get feedback from the school board in terms of next steps and continuing on, but at least letting them know the amount of time and commitment that's going to be required if you want to be a part of this committee, that it could be over the next several months.
Very good.
So we had talked about this in the board training a little bit, that I don't think any of us want to be on the committee.
Okay.
Okay.
And at least I will speak for myself. I don't want to be on the committee. But that was suggested that the board directs, but isn't necessarily on that committee.
Okay.
But if you guys got in your addendum, I kind of wanted to have some information from the board that we were all together on, and that as far as communicating, I think it's important at the outset to communicate to the parents and community the purpose. So I just put these down as a suggestion, and I thought maybe everybody could put their, also share their input, so that we're all together on communicating to the parents from the board, why are we doing this? Because there's always going to be people that are confused, like, why are you doing this? Everything's working just fine. Why, they want to know, like, why are you upsetting the fruit basket, basically?
Yeah.
And so I think we had talked in our other meeting, and these are kind of the things that we talked about a bit. I guess we talked about class size, we need to have that class size in a way that we're using resources wisely, but they're not too big for teachers. Learning spaces, we talked about last time, how some schools have empty rooms, and some schools don't, but then some schools have a space for music class and, all different things, and then other schools, there's just a lot of things to consider as far as learning spaces. And then we talked about maximum use of the building for our money, because we have less money when enrollment declines. But then if we're paying for the same amount of buildings, then it becomes more difficult. So I just wanted to know what everybody else felt like, what the purpose of this is from a board perspective.
Well, I agree. I don't think we should be on the committee. Only because, one of the things that came out in that training is that people may feel, if there's a board member on the committee and they know that we're the ones making the decision, if one of us says something, then they feel like that's the decision being made. So I think it's important that the committee feels like they can speak, they can have their opinions, they can put things forward without feeling like they're being unduly influenced, or, I don't know. I mean, it's a mixed bag, because obviously there's a part of me that, I want to hear, I want to be I want to, be the fly on the
And
wall.
we'll do our very best to
Yeah,
bring
be
you
a fly
that
on the wall,
information
but I
and
also
share.
don't want to unduly influence this process.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily a right and a wrong decision for a board member to be on that committee. There are opinions, everybody will have their own opinion, and that's fine. I personally don't want to be on it, so if anybody was really strongly wanted to be on it, I wouldn't stop.
Do any of you have an
stop
opinion?
Well, if you think about it and change your mind. But
No, I think you've addressed, though, a lot of the considerations. I'd be curious to know if there were other considerations that you're also looking at.
As far as middle school?
Yeah, I mean,
And,
these-
I should have said elementary and middle school.
You're good.
So if we could just change that, because then I put high school and middle school. So if we could change that to elementary and middle school, because I feel like this applies to
does.
elementary and middle school, which is what you were talking about here.
Yep.
So I just wanted, I
So
wanted to share it with
like I said,
everybody.
AJ and I talked about getting some extra teachers on that committee. So our committee for middle school ended up being about 12 people. And that's, to me, is a good number. If you get many more than ends up. But we need to specifically look at space and socioeconomic equity, or close.
now, what is that, what do you mean by
You know
that?
what?
Because I
I
know
guess
that
that's
comes
down-
up.
Okay.
And I know that was one of, at least where I live and when the last boundary changes happened, that it kind of was this weird carving out. And I know that, that was a big issue last
I
time.
guess that was on the high school. I guess that socioeconomic also needs to be on on the elementary.
middle, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we should probably add that, do you guys think? Add that too? Is that what you're saying, Sue? Add that socioeconomic
At least it needs to be
too?
taken into consideration, because right
As a
now,
consideration.
middle school ranges anywhere between 34% free reduced to 60% free reduced, depending what school you go to. So if there's boundaries that can be adjusted to help adjust that level,
Do you know what she's talking about? She's saying free and reduced. I'm seeing some looks.
Sorry,
Maybe.
free reduced
Do you know
lunch.
what free and reduced lunch?
I do, yeah.
and the percentage of kids on free and reduced lunch, so.
So you want to make it more or less uniform?
Diversity.
As much as as close as we can. There's always gonna be highs and lows. There's
Right.
always gonna be, but
I know there can be a great discrepancy in that as far as our elementary schools are concerned. But of course, people want their children to go to the school that's nearby.
right.
And so,
Right.
but you're.
Well, no,
you're-
it's not gerrymandering to make sure that we get this one in, but
Yeah,
part
you,
of that GIS system can identify a household on whether it's a free lunch household or reduced. We don't have anybody who's attached to it. We don't know which children are attached to it, but a free household or a reduced household or a full pay household. So we get an idea of what the socioeconomic is of this area. And if our choice is moving this area or moving this area, and the socioeconomics would play one way or the other,
yeah, sure.
that would be a contributing factor. It's not by far anywhere near the only factor, and it's not the first factor, it's a factor.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that has come up is, and Tendoy was the example, that Tendoy, those kids get split into all three middle schools. Are you also considering keeping kids?
That is why we thought it was important to do both elementary and middle school together, is because of that feeder school piece. It's not perfect, and there are, for the for the vast majority of elementary schools, it's pretty close to, they have a feeder middle school, but also knowing that as we look at changing boundaries in elementary or enrollment areas, that would have an impact on those feeder schools. So in coordination with the work, we would need to do that together as we get to that point where we're looking, okay, here's some changes, how would that impact what it looks like at middle school and with those enrollment areas. So that's why we thought it was important to do these both at the same time,
Very good.
along with other reasons, but that being one of them.
Do you, does anybody else have any other thing besides adding, you know, that consideration that's below, putting it back up to the middle school, the socioeconomic? Is there any other things? I just feel like it's really important, that communication, the why.
If I can make a suggestion, Madam Chair, and that would be, so last month, I brought you some guiding principles from the previous round of attendance and enrollment zones. And that combined with Mrs. Fisher's document, I think, and your suggestions today, as well as any of the other verbal comments from the board, we could incorporate into a message, and then Courtney can send that to you as a draft, and then you could take a look at it and provide more feedback
Yeah.
before we send it out.
Since it's sort of coming from the board, I
Yeah,
want to make sure
absolutely.
also
If that will
that the
work,
why
it-
is
That
coming.
why,
could-
that why is really, really
Yeah.
important.
It is
Pull all
really
of that
important.
together.
Because
and-
anything else that needs to be added,
Mm-hmm.
definitely we should add.
When you're mentioning Courtney, are you just talking about the board briefs, or would it be like a
No, this would,
pop-up on the district page?
yeah, a separate document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just-
Is that what you'd like to see?
I just want a clarification. of
Okay.
that. I like the idea of a separate thing.
Yeah. Did you want to speak to that, Mrs. Fisher?
That would be helpful.
Email you the draft prior to that.
Go ahead.
That would be great.
And then review it during the communications report, and then get feedback from you, polish that up, and finalize it with your input, and then send it out. And we can send it out in a variety of ways. It'd be great, once we have that document, to do a press release, media release, so it goes out wide. I mean, we've already emailed all of our elementary school and middle school parents with the invitation to participate if they are inclined. But then, after that's completed, that gives us something else to report to the community with the purpose, and, you know, and leading with that why, which is really important. And then we can get that out through social media, we can get that out through the website, we can get that out through the regular media as well.
Yeah, because I think that why is so important to have that either before or right at the same time.
Right.
As, you know, the announcement that we're considering it.
So maybe, you know, kind of back to our curriculum committee choices, how are you going to narrow your list down? What is your plan?
Thank you,
that.
Courtney.
You've got
So our plan for this is just random selection. So we'll split them up. We'll make sure we get representation from those 5 geographic areas and the 2 random. So we'll just do an automatic generator, assign each one a number, and just select them randomly and let them know and let the others know that we appreciate it, but we'll also be keeping them informed of the meetings and progress as we move forward.
Okay,
Same way?
I love it.
good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. So we're no board members on the committee.
Right,
Okay.
fair enough.
And so that's our first phase, is the elementary middle. Okay, just to be clear. Okay. Next, we have Tanya Wilkes presenting the cell phone, vape detector, and school resource officer information.
So is the cell phone policy first, right? So here's kind of an outline I was hoping for. You got boundaries, we got attendance committees, we got quite a few things happening right now. We need to go through all the process and steps for next school year. And so looking at February, setting up a committee, here's kind of a general draft of who'd be on that committee, come up with new policy and procedures, present at the April board meeting, and then by that policy and procedure to be updated by June, but then start working on the campaign over the May and summer, and how we'd roll this out. I did contact Rigby, and their big input was that they rolled it out with having a parent meeting prior to school starting, and then having to, actually at each of the schools, having a student assemblies to talk about the why. And so just getting that message across right out the get-go of the why and how they're focusing on the mental health of the students and the safety of students as well, and hopefully addressing all the issues that the parents might have with that.
That sounds really good. I do have a question about the book he suggested, The Anxious Generation.
Go ahead.
That was from Megan. She wanted to see if the board could do
The-
a book study.
Brian
Oh,
Lord
oh,
actually,
no,
actually
I was
brought that
talking
up
about
as well.
I was talking about the principal that brought that up, and I was just wondering if I could get a copy of it.
So I know Megan had
Download it.
suggested doing it as a book study for the whole board, so if you all want one, I can get you one. I actually started reading it and attended a kind of like a webinar with it, the Zoom, and it was pretty interesting.
What book is that?
Anxious Generation.
I don't know if it's the best book, but he recommended it. Looks really good.
It really is just full of studies and data and
Research behind cell phones and social media.
on,
Yeah,
on
and
the youth mainly, but.
Since it's so much research, I downloaded it on Audible, but it
Hard
would
to
be
hear.
really nice to have the physical so I can underline, I can have that.
So is everybody, we want to do that then?
let's
That'd
go
be
ahead and get
awesome.
'em, please.
Okay, and I can have that within probably about a week for you guys, so get that to you.
Thank you.
All right, and then I wanted to put in front of you, we put vape detect,
Oh, maybe just to back up. So, Madam Chair included some items for the board to look over. And then also from our PEA president, Ms. McGorry, she included for the board a survey results for you to gander through those. And she broke them down by categories. I think it's 5 or 6 pages, so it might take you a minute to get through those. But I think
12.
that's important information.
I
is
can't-
good.
I couldn't get it to load at home, and I can't get it to load here. So
Oh.
I will work on it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So I
What-
think that's an important piece of this, because last time we talked about it, I think Ms. Clark maybe asked, or
teachers.
Ernest, about, the teacher input and what they were thinking. And so you'll have that based upon the survey that Ms. McGray conducted. So just to keep that in mind as well as we move forward with this project.
Uh-huh. And did everybody see the committee recommendation? 2 secondary, 2 elementary. I'm wondering, I would like, I don't know, I guess I'll ask you, everybody else. Would you want to do the parent selection like we've done with the curriculum? And select one person each so that we kind of have a representation from parents? Or is it random, or how do we select the 2 secondary and 2 elementary? I don't know if everybody can submit their feedback, certainly. So I don't know if it's like that crucial, if it's just random, if it's an invitation. So I guess I'll ask you. like,
I'll
what
take
would you-
direction from you because I can do it either way. Typically, this is, they have opportunity when you get presented the policy to give you feedback and so forth, but it's up to you. We were gonna just randomly select.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Unless a parent, I guess, I don't know, it's hard though, because if there's a parent that is really wanting to be on that committee, it would be nice to have somebody's really invested instead of having it be random. I don't know.
It's
so
hard to look at a background of social media and cell phones, so that's
It's
more
because if
difficult.
somebody really does have a lot of, expertise, maybe they're a counselor, maybe they, I don't know, it
But
might be nice to have some representation from,
But I feel like it'd be really hard to pick that and say one is over the other. That's why when we do a policy, so we're just trying to guideline the policy, or give you guidelines on a policy and so forth, that they would have opportunity to give you feedback on those 2 reviews, right? The first reading and second reading.
yeah.
I feel like that's when they could bring in their expertise to actually say to somebody, you're more qualified because you're a counselor. I don't know if that would be adequate for cell phone policy, to say
true.
who is more
Yeah,
qualified
it's true.
compared to curriculum.
I guess one suggestion I would have is that this should be I would like it to be an open meeting. It would be a special meeting, it would not be a board meeting, but just to be able to have it open, if there is, I mean, likely there's gonna be 1 or 2 parents that attend,
Absolutely.
is what usually happens. But just so that everybody knows, this is when we're talking about the cell phone, you wouldn't be participating in this meeting, but if you would like to come and listen, so that
We
you're
can post
aware
it.
of what's
Yep.
talked about. I mean, the more information they get, everybody gets, the better, because then they understand why.
Right. And when I've
With
talked
those
to-
board committees too, we do notice all of those. Those are all public open meetings, so
Oh,
we would do the same.
perfect. So that's perfect. It goes right along with.
I just have one thought. Just looking at this where we have 2 secondary, 2 elementary, like on the parents and even on like the administrators. On your end, when you're looking at that, because I see like 6th grades in elementary, 7th
Sixth
grade.
grade's in middle school.
Well, no, I mean like K through 5 is 6th grade.
Yes,
That's what I mean.
six.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
there's 6th
Grade levels, got it.
and then 7 up here. But I just think probably the most people affected are going to be middle and high school.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell me your perspective on this. My
Mm-hmm.
thought was like, move one of the elementary parents to a middle school parent.
'Kay. And one of the elementary administrators?
Administrators to a middle school.
Okay.
Do
Just
you know?
so it's a little more even, in my opinion.
Do you know, I mean, I know you just have elementary kids right now, but the considerations are 100% dramatically polar opposite different in elementary versus almost all considerations are different. For an elementary student.
For cell phone policy?
A cell phone
So
policy,
all the school
it
districts
just
that have,
feels very, very different.
so like in American Falls, Rigby, West Ada, they all had the same tweaks and changes in the cell phone policy where elementary, they would not allow them throughout the school day at all. Middle school, they would not even allow them. Most of them made them keep them in their lockers throughout the school day at all. High school, they allowed it and at lunchtime. And so it truly, only difference was that lunch period time. That,
Yeah, I
and
just wondered
West
if
Ada
it-
did that,
if it should be a different.
Rigby did that, and American
once
Falls
we-
did that.
Once we get the feedback from the teachers and the administrators, it feels like it might be different. But anyway, we can
Yeah.
always have a policy for
Discussion.
elementary and a policy for middle. But I like Megan's suggestion.
Right,
that
well,
we might
they,
need more representation where it's a big group. It's 6th grade all the way to senior.
are
That
you,
is a really diverse.
so everything else on here looks
large.
okay, though, with committee members? Okay. Good? Okay. All right, and then I wrote a grant for vape detectors, and we put them in all the high schools. Running into roadblocks, things are going really well, though. Our numbers from the time frame from last year to this year is half, so something's working really well. But in that, I had to provide preventions, and we do that online curriculum and then in-person curriculum through the health department, and they just wanted a MOU. We don't share any information of the student to them. They actually sign up with the health department, they take the course, and then they just let us know that the student is doing that. And so they just wanted the MOU to say, yes, we're having that engagement of doing this online course with the health department. Okay, and then finally, I wrote a grant for the school resource officer, and we were awarded $120,000 for 3 years, each year. So met with Pocatello Police Department, they are all on board, they're excited about this, but of course, everybody is in higher demand of looking for police officers. So they met with the mayor yesterday, and this is going to get through as soon as possible, but they wanted to fill the positions that are open right now, which is about 2 or 3 that they will be hiring in November and December, and we'll get that resource officer by January. So I'm working with the State Department and understanding what that funding might look like. We'll still get the 120, just might look differently in 3 installments rather than 4, but we'll be able to have that for 3 years. What we did was provide an SRO for the elementaries for truancies, home visits, just visibility, support for after school or after school activities and so forth, Highland Pokey Game, those types of things, right? So we feel like, especially with all the things that were occurring right now today with different events in the nation, we just really think this is important to have SROs on all campuses as much as possible.
So during the school day, that SRO would split time between the elementaries, but in the evenings, you're saying they could assist with
Help.
games and things like that?
And assist with, at the elementary level, we have a little bit of different type of truancy court, and boy, our CRWs really want to do home visits, which they cannot do alone, having an SRO available to do that, which we really do try to utilize that. It's just really hard. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Congratulations, that's great.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Good job.
nice work. Thank you. Next, Jonathan will present capital improvements, ESSER funds update, Highland update, and PB Tech update.
Okay. Good afternoon, board members. Quick SIP presentation. Are you all able to open that PDF? Again, just some pictures before and after. I appreciate our school plant coordinator, Brian Glenn, for kind of taking some of these shots there. Again, this first one, just in alphabetical order, at least to start with, there was just a little bit of project that there was an empty room next to the cafeteria and they could use some more space there. So we, took down that wall, expanded that Alameda cafeteria into a little bit bigger space. And so that was something that the school wanted there. The next one is the Arches building, that expansion. You'll see that digging the footings in that first photograph. The second one is kind of the framing inside. The staff is very excited about that. And then finally is the kind of exterior before the siding has started. That siding, we did receive, or the contractor received the correct material. There was a little delay on that, and that has been going on this week, should be completed this week, as well as we're waiting on the final part for the fire alarm system. It should have been there Thursday, but again, it should be here and installed for this week. So we anticipate getting the certificate of occupancy next week. So we're hoping within 10 days to 2 weeks, they'll be able to start using that.
They're in the other part.
Finished?
Say it one more time.
The inside is sheetrock and finished?
Yep. It's all done, just waiting for the fire alarm system, yes. Yes, so right now they're still schooled as normal, but they're excited to expand into this area.
That's great.
Yep. The next one is some pictures of our Century turf there, the grass getting scraped off. Again, these are just, the turf is literally just rolls of carpet. And so different colors sewn in, stitched together. And so there you'll see that one. And then this one is kind of from our video camera, it's kind of a wide angle oblong of the final product. And so
Is it done for their first game?
yeah,
game?
yes, it was down for their first game. First home game. We knew it was going to be a little bit later, so they did have to play at some other locations there initially. But they had made prior arrangements to that.
Did they get the team room done for that?
The team room was completed last fall, October, November, and so yes, this was the first time they were able to use that team room. I think it went really well. So they are enjoying their facilities for sure. This next one is just again another project that we do that normally doesn't gain too much attention there, but taking out risers, that's kind of a thing of the past. But you can see all the work that is underneath those risers had to be removed. And then another picture of the carpet when it's down there. Kind of, not all the way completed, but very close. The Highland bleachers, there's a pre-shot, and this is as of, when was that, last Friday. But they have the wood, the frames and the wood completed today, and they will be done by tomorrow. So we're excited about that project as well.
Mr. Balls, remind us of maybe the capacity, if you know that.
Right.
Did we add 3 or 4 rows?
We added 3 rows on each side. The capacity
Is it about 1,000?
is, yes, below 1,000, because that's our limit for fire code. Yeah, for egress for fire code. So we should be able to get little less than 1,000 people in those bleachers. So that should accommodate a lot of our just regularly attended basketball games, volleyball games, and so forth. Obviously, the inter-city matches, they're the big district games. They will have to still be played off-site at either Pocatello or Century High School. So, but yeah, this was a good addition there. Again, staying at Highland, again, they got a team room and a shed. If you remember there to the north, we had a take down the shed there. This first picture is, they did the shed first, and then there's the slab of the team room there. They have had some delays, and so we've met with them, and we knew that, you know, it wasn't gonna be completed by football season. Our goal is to get it done before, you know, the snow flies. So again, you can see they've done the interior plumbing and the brickwork on the outside. And now we're still just waiting for some trusses. That final picture there is all the CMU brick, the block completed for the interior and the exterior, just waiting for that block. But the shed there is complete, so that we'll be able to, you know, start, you know, putting some equipment in there. I believe that's a track shed that they will use for that.
That's so nice. I had a teacher ask if the PE kids are going to be able to shower
So
after they do PE. And
So I'm going to, obviously, the administration will help there, but my answer would be yes, because remember, the
I thought that
insurance,
was part of the insurance.
that's, yep, the insurance will pay for the 4 showers in the back part of this team room. So yes, in the fall and in the spring, they should be able to use those showers there. Okay. Again, just kind of going on. Again, Pocatello Plumbing. This was, again, 100-year plus plumbing in the basement. But you can kind of see what had to be done there, that basically those pipes were just corroded. I didn't include a picture of it, but it's just like it was, you know, Pocatello High School plumbing there.
Below the kitchen or something?
Yes, it was in the kitchen. Yep, that we found some pipes that disintegrated. And so we had to scope that and find out where it was good. The second picture, again, that white PVC pipe is current, up to date and standard there. There were some complications, again, because they've, you know, as we cut through that we thought was cement, well, we cut through some electrical, you know, that had been there for decades. And so there was some extra work to be completed there. So, but that was a monumental task there. And now their plumbing is better in that unit there. Just a small one I threw in there for elementary. Wilcox requested a sidewalk, so their students that were being dropped off didn't have to go through the parking lot. So that was just a little sidewalk off to the side. Just some little things that we do during the summer to kind of help and help throughout the schools there. And just one shot there of the Indian Hills roof. All that white is all a brand new roof. And so that was there towards the end. We were on top of the roof there that I took a picture in the background there. I included one of the PV Tech remodel. You know all the things there, but I thought that was an interesting one to document for the board. This was and I don't know if you had seen it, this was the interior plumbing. So you're looking inside the building as they basically had to dig the trenches for the plumbing. To get
And had to
plumbing.
wheelbarrow all that in, right?
They had to, the cement, they had to wheelbarrow all that in through the, over a weekend there. So it was a lot of work there. So when we talk about the money spent to remodel, a lot of that is, that type of work as well. Some of the other projects that I necessarily didn't include, obviously we have a lot of flooring, the VCT upgrades. Another Chubbuck, there was a sidewalk to their ADA playground that needed to be installed. A complete lighting upgrade. We're continuing with our fire upgrades. So Idaho got a new fire panel plus detectors. Indian Hills had a new ADA entry there. Jefferson got new HVAC and boilers. Tyhee also got a lighting upgrade. And then, as you know, a lot of work at PV Tech and Highland High School. So again, just a sampling, last one. Again, thanks to the maintenance. And I also include our transportation food service for ensuring our facilities and programs, students, learners are there. It's a busy time in the year there. So we appreciate also our taxpayers that help fund some of these projects to help maintain the quality of our facilities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So much work.
And we are already started on next year's CIP plans and projects, so some of you will get updated on that. The next one is our ESSER we are winding down, spending this federal money that we received several years ago. The money needed to be obligated by September 30th, and then all the construction projects completed and paid out by December. So we're in kind of that stage there. You can kind of see that we've got a few projects there. Again, they will be, this money will be helping with at PV Tech for expanded classrooms, for some of the bleachers at Arches, the additional space, some communication, some cameras also at PV Tech. These salaries there will also kind of be used to to help maintain our staffing levels through this last year as we evaluate staffing and so forth as we always do. So
I thought the Highland High School auxiliary gym bleachers were gonna be paid by insurance.
okay, excellent. Yes, they have been. I just haven't seen that. So that is the total amount of the bleachers. I got permission to pay just in case that insurance doesn't come through that, but we wanted to at least have it allocated. I'm hoping that we'll get that final decision, yes or no. The last thing we did hear from the insurance that they might pay for a percentage of the rows, the three rows out of the 5.
Oh.
But then we came.
But you
Well,
can build 3 rows.
correct, and we came back, and they've been great to work with. We reminded them that, again, they have letters from the manufacturer and the sales rep that this was the cheaper route to replace all of the bleachers rather than go the fourth model previous and try to get parts, and it would have been a lot expensive. So it's just not an easy, we increase this much, so we'll pay for that much. So, yeah, so we're still working with insurance there, but I wanted to make sure we had it
Because
solidified.
paying for 3 rows is certainly not replacement, and it's not paying for the displacement.
Correct. And so, in reminder, this is for the lower gym. For the main gym, yeah, they're paying for it all.
Yeah, but this is displacement of,
Correct. These are the kids, so hopefully save us some, travel time to other schools and so forth. So, but yes, I promise we're pushing that as far as we can, as hard as we can there.
Were we renting the mech for any of the things, or this was just when we were using other schools?
We did rent some of the mech for practice time, and we're still doing that a little bit just because we still lost the gym. So they are paying for that as a displacement there. We did, they did, some of their Peg Peterson volleyball tournament. We had to rent some of the mech courts for volleyball. So this will primarily just, this lower gym, extra seating is again for some of those games so that we won't have to go to Highland won't have to go to Pocatello or to Century, for some of these, games that, that we should be able to fit in this gym.
Great.
Okay. Just some brief updates again on Highland High School. If you'll notice, or you probably won't notice, but the demo there to the south, they have torn off all of the cement, all the footings of the cafeteria, and kind of just hauled that all dirt away. What we're kind of waiting is for the electrical to be removed from the ceiling of the remaining of that D hall. That will happen this weekend. So Saturday and Sunday the power will be cut to Highland so that we can do this cutover. Once the cutover happens and reroute that electrical, then we'll be able to see some big progress on the demo of the remainder of that building. Okay.
Great.
So yeah, things are going as planned as there at Highland. Yeah, I knew you were going to say. So we on the funding, or is that where you're going?
design. Just talk about.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you about that. So we had a meeting, and Miss Judy and Miss Clark were able to attend on Friday. It was kind of an interior design meeting as we saw their first recommendations We had administrators there as well, kind of giving some inputs on different flooring for the different spaces, and they went there. We will get copies of those and share those with you. The next phase will be an exterior, probably by the end of this month, an exterior round about that. So it's they're moving along very, very nicely, still on schedule to be completed in December, so we can go out to bid in January.
That's great.
Where I thought Dr. Howell was headed was we got confirmation that we should receive 80% of our funding by the end of the month.
Wow.
So I believe the bonds from the state side are just in about for closing, and then it takes a couple weeks to fund that. And they showed us our list, and of course we're on the list that should get 80%, roughly 35 million, that we'll be able to get and start earning some interest there.
So we made payments to Bateman Hall or the
So we have, yep, and that has come out of the, we did receive some, if you call them prepayments or some additional payments for the building, and so that's how we're able to float that with cash. The remaining amount there is
prepayments from insurance?
From insurance.
I see, great.
Forgive me. The remaining of that money is still, earning interest and so forth. So I envision it'll probably be February or March. I'll give another, okay, here's the bids, and then I'll kind of give you an updating on funding. As the board, we've talked about different funding sources. We'll know exactly how much the Highland is going to cost us, and we can report to you, where we're at with all the funding, and if we need to, sell the property, for example, other resources there to make sure we can pay for this.
And I think in our previous meeting, we determined that the state money is going to Highland. Is that right? Have we already?
Correct.
Voted on that? I thought we did.
Yes, yeah, that's the good portion of this. Overall, we'll get, right, again, haven't seen the final numbers there, but it should be 43+ million, and a good chunk of that will go to Highland.
Isn't paid for by the insurance?
Correct, to make sure we have that. The remaining will be used kind of over SIP, as again, we lost the lottery money, and so we'll use that every year and go from there. We do anticipate they said the rest of the 20% should come to us in February, so we should have all this the next fiscal year. Okay. Again, just a little PV Tech update. We're pushing. What do you say? Sprinting. Sometimes it seems like a jog, but we're going towards the finish line there for PV Tech. We'll have our OAC, and I should back that up on the Highland OAC meeting. There is a meeting on Thursday, an OAC meeting, just on a Zoom meeting to kind of see the updated information on the demo. That's on Thursday. And then tomorrow we'll also have our weekly OAC meeting. We're down to weekly with PV Tech to get it. It looks like the grading's almost done. We'll get an update to see where the asphalt is.
The outside looks amazing.
Yes, I don't know.
You can't even tell.
Yes, they did an awesome job. They did. And that was one of those that took a little extra time. And we were a little frustrated with that a little bit, but the end result was awesome.
Yeah.
And so we'll take our time and make sure it's done right, for sure. And so we're still, the inside is going great. Last Wednesday, Rhonda Naffs gave us a little tour. They're doing amazing things in textiles and that's just, and computer programming and science and so forth like that. So that building is still being used 100% and, very functional, and we're anxious to have it be completely used.
I have a kind of a question.
Sure.
When we were there for the regional meeting, finding my way around, what kind of, I assume, is there going to be signage, people to point? We were joking that, they were like, yeah, we need breadcrumbs, because you start going down one hallway and then, oh, nope, that's not where I want. I'm just curious, what kind of thought is going into?
Yeah, that's a great question. And
road signs.
We will be, on the columns, we'll have the programs highlighted for each of those pod areas. And so it will be like a bit of a road sign. And so those columns will be wrapped with the medical wing. And,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
which programs are there, so you could say first pod, yeah, CNA or whatever, med tech.
Gotcha.
Would there
Yeah, if
be
it wasn't-
maps every so often? I would assume for
Yeah.
fire, you'd have
Correct, and that's where I was
Yeah,
going.
for
There'll
the
be
fire.
evacuation maps per
Yeah.
occupancy.
which is helpful to know where you are.
Correct,
too.
correct.
The vet tech, when they're with the horses. I was
Yeah,
like,
the
okay,
horse.
this is where I'm in the right place.
Well, I went out a door that was chained. Well, I tried to go out a door that was chained.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I took a wrong turn,
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
but it's so beautiful.
And you'll get used to it. I mean, it's just like any new building. And remember, when you were in college and things like that, it took a few days to get your way around, and then it's good there. But yeah, any visitors, we'll make sure they don't get lost.
Yeah.
So,
Looks great.
no, excellent question. Any other thoughts on anything? Okay, that's all I had.
great.
Madam Chair.
Next on the agenda is public written comment. Written comment was received and is included in the addendum, and there is no request for public comment. So if there is no other items, then that concludes this meeting, and I hereby declare